Today we're going to examine the tactical acumen and strategies of Commander Farsight of the Tau, as we look at how he fights and comes to understand the Orks, and to come up with strategies to counter their attacks. So how did Farsight overcome his defeats at the hands of the Orks? What insight did he initially gain that they were able to use against him later, and what tactics won out for him? Friends, let's find out, and welcome to another 40k video. The Farsight enclaves were Oshovar's first true command. It saw him reinforce the Tau population of Arkanasha as they faced the Greenskin menace for the first time. He broke the Orc forces from afar, so their mobs were on the edge of panic. The largest Orc restored order. Through stealth drones, Farsight also saw the Orcs would accept any excuse to attack each other, so he targeted the largest Orc in each mob with weapons from afar. Then his forces would disappear, causing each mob to turn the violence on each other. And with the drones he began to understand the reading and writings of the Orcs that gained him the moniker of being called Farsighted, thus Farsight. Oshovar's Earth-cast allies cut audio snippets of Orcish challenges and insults into the comm networks that the invaders had looted from fallen Tau, delivering the right Orcish insults at the right time, driving wedges between the Orcs. After a year, the Tau could get food and water to those who had previously been trapped in the biodomes on the planet. Farsight came up with what was to be the definitive work on the Greenskin mindset, dubbed the Book of the Beast, as Oshovar called it. This was passed round Tau forces, educating them. It taught the Firecast how to think like an Orc, to understand their language, even to fight with the fury of an Orc in battle, if necessary. Above all, it taught them that their commander understood the enemy well, and that the Tau could still win. The Tau military machine reversed its tactics, driving teams of fire warriors and battlesuits close to blast apart the Orcs, wherever Farsight's dune-stalking Pathfinder teams uncovered them. When the Orcs mounted one of their fearsome chargers, the Tau would hold their ground at the ambush point, kneeling in the rust and laying down a fearsome network of supporting fire that overlapped whenever the Orcs came close, and photon grenades would remove any that got through that. This all-out attack style put fire in the bellies of Farsight's men. Many of those trapped in the biodomes were able to be removed to safe areas in the highlands, in mountain fortresses. The Warg had been reduced down to less than a quarter of its size, moving through gorges near to these biodomes, dubbed the Ghoul Gorges. Orcs wanted to open up the biodomes. They had a giant drill-armed walker just for this purpose. Farsight led his people to get in close to fight the Orc column, who were bottlenecked into the gorge. As plasma fire rained down, shimmering domes flickered into existence, denying the Tau their vengeance. This covered each mob, and even covered the Drill Titan, so one of their mech boys has been able to put together this great defence against the Tau attacks, because the heavy rail rifle rounds of Farsight's broadside teams simply disintegrated on impact. The Tau forces were trapped, unable to leave those in the domes to death, and the Commander Brightsword with his team found the only way to get around the bubble was to attack close. Just what the Orcs wanted. Every time the Tau penetrated a bubble field in order to strike at the greenskins within, the Orcs would charge headlong into their foes, guns blazing. Unable to hit and run, the Tau was slaughtered. The Ethereals eventually decided to abandon the attack on the planet for the moment. Therefore, Farsight and his forces had to regretfully retreat. Later, after facing the Tyranids, the worlds of the Damocles Gulf are lightly garrisoned, and Oshovar was tasked to reclaim these worlds due to his successes against the Orcs and the Imperium. I think I'll cover those 2 points in a future video. I'm talking there about the Tyranids and the Imperium. So Farsight has been raised to the point of being a saviour for the Tau. He's a symbol, especially buoyed by the propaganda that the Tau pump out. But the asteroid belts, as Farsight is redeployed, the asteroid belts to the east of the enclaves, is infested with Orcs, and Farsight's instinct is to go back to what he did before, to pick him apart from distance, but he realises that these are not just asteroids. They're riding in fully armed and operational Orc attack moons. The Tau began to eliminate them, using the speed of the aircast in flight, but whilst this happened, many more moved towards the worlds of the next system. The Tau, after the death of an ethereal leader, determined to finish their enemy, but this awoke a leader amongst them dubbed Grog Ironleaf. And for those who follow Critical Role, I think the name Grog should be left alone to their orc. And no, Grog Ironleaf is not raging, but he has come to understand the Firecast. When the orc fleet split, Farsight pursued the Dagger asteroid, believing it would be the choice of an orc leader. He was on the money with that. He joined the town on the planet's surface of Atari Vo. It was a world of cities and gardens instead of other planets he had recently visited. The asteroid Dagger slammed into the planet's main continent, ending millions of lives on impact. The orcs emerged. The crater provided cover against Firecast firing resolutions. An orc copter craft pushed the tower into cover until the Firecast were able to counter them. Farsight pressed the advantage, leading a cadre of his own warriors over the lip of the Dagger ship's impact crater and falling upon the orcs below. Only then did the true cunning of Grog become clear. Thousands of orcs spilled into the crater and fell upon Farsight's forces. Like the jaws of a vice, the tower could not fire in every direction at once, and they were swamped within a few minutes of the trap being sprung. The last stand became a massacre as a hulking, ostentationally dressed war boss flung himself into the fight. His mind churning with emotion, Farsight ordered his battlesuit teams to boost out of the melee, and their jetpacks were used. They fired into the orcs below as they soared away, filling a great many with their parting gesture, but the fact remained they had charged headlong into a trap. Those that escaped planned a planet-wide counter-attack. Farsight acted as an advisor only, and fought in the forces themselves, risking his life to atone, but the stain remained on his honour. Farsight had underestimated the cunning of War Chief Grog, and as the fight had many war zones and fronts, the war for the enclaves raged on. Farsight saw that the orc forces there were going to bring the enclaves to ruin. Even killing their warlord would not stop things. So he took a moment of reflection. I imagine if this was the Imperium, they'd be flogging themselves and whispering prayers to their chosen Primarch or the Emperor. But here, it being the Tau, there was a different approach, a more chilled approach. So Farsight plunged beneath the water in his search for insight, and sat cross-legged in a trance beneath the waves, and found solutions to the problems that assailed him that might help restore his honour. Then he did the same by one of the great volcanoes, going into a sulphurous tunnel with poisonous fumes and trickles of lava. He lay on his back and communed with the earth. Then he flew to where tinned dry forests burned, with hazard protocols flashing and his flesh beginning to burn. He had one more moment of insight, and then he flew to share what he had realised. And each of those places he went, I've got a feeling they're tied to the various castes of the Tau, but as I'm not super familiar with them, I'm fairly new to Tau lore, certainly getting into it. I'll leave that for the wiser to look at. Over the next few weeks, there came a series of dramatic turns in the tide of Farsight enclaves. Above the crystal plains of Tinekla, elegant Tau fighters had dueled for weeks with thousands of snub-nosed Ork aircraft. Commander Farsight suddenly joined them out of nowhere, ordering every aircraft pilot in the skies to override their consoles and release their propellant gases, forming a wall of volatile emissions, shaped to his specific instructions. Then he ignited it with blasts from his plasma rifle. A great gale of flame roiled across the planet. As they burnt the last of their fuel to escape, the Tau aircraft were buoyed by the resultant thermals and rode the thunderhead of the titanic fireball, whilst the clumsy Ork aircraft were consumed behind them. In the process, the surface was simultaneously scoured clean of both the greenskins and their corrupting spores. On the water world of Shellas High, Commander Farsight dove once more to the bottom of the ocean and carefully planted the gifts he had requested from the Earthcast. His old friend Ovessa had not let him down. The dull thumps of the disc-shaped seismic fibrillator nodes awoke the wrath of the world oceanic vents. Soon the seas above were riven by such extreme tsunamis that the Ork battleships prowling its waters were all capsized. The razor whales of the oceans ate well that night, but Farsight had already moved on. The earthen landscape of Lubgral was next. The Earthcast had built hundreds of oval living nodes upon the planet's surface, each nestled safely between the planet's towering spires of rock. The Orks roamed Lubgral in their billions, besieging every tiny node, and the tower beginning to starve. Farsight ordered the entire fleet of Tineklar to enter extremely low orbit and mag-lift the nodes to safety. Then Oshovar dropped a clutch of Ovessa's seismic fibrillators into Borgal, the Great Abyss. Before the hour was out, the planet shuddered in protest, and every one of the delicate rock spires collapsed, burying the Ork hordes in 40 meters of solid rock. The mag-lifted living nodes were lowered back down to sit atop the world's new crust. They were restored to full productivity within the week. Lastly, Farsight returned to his adoptive world of Violos, and his first act was to conduct a mass bonding ritual, revitalizing the frayed morale of his warriors. With the other enclave worlds freed from invaders, and the cast united behind him once more, Oshovar enacted a mercilessly efficient military strategy that culled the Orks from one distant district after another. He then used powerful artificial firestorms to sterilize the environment. Very few indigenous species survived the extermination Farsight unleashed on the planet, but no Tau were lost to the flames, as his chillingly effective methods burned the Orks from his enclaves. Oshovar's once failed honour felt restored, but the one concession to his own desires was the isolation of the Ork leader Grog Iron Teeth. I love the misspelling of teeth there into the more orky word of teeth. He finally located the war chief in the eye of a firestorm, attacking his own followers in an attempt to restore order. It is said that Farsight bested the beast in a single combat, though none were there to witness it. All that remains of Grog is a sparkling globe filled with ash, the name of each of the enclave's worlds engraved upon its surface. Though Farsight had won a series of great victories and restored himself as the hero of the newly fortified colony worlds, the greenskin threat was not and will likely never end. And on that note, and the fantastic strategy, military-wise, of Farsight, we'll wrap up today's video. Let me know what you think. Drop me a comment down below.